I'm sure you've all laid awake at night thinking to yourself, I wonder how much oil Russia has. Okay, so it hasn't kept you up. But it's a very good question in light of the upheaval occurring in the Russian energy industry due to the sanctions imposed on them following their invasion of the Ukraine. Before addressing this question, you should know what components make up the resource number to fully understand the total endowment. In North America and numerous other jurisdictions, the classification of resources is defined by the Society of Petroleum Engineers, or SPE. In simple terms, they define reserves as the amount of petroleum, or in our case oil, deemed to be commercially recoverable from discovered areas. On the other hand, resources, which are separated into two types, consisting of contingent resources, or discovered oil that is considered uneconomical to produce at the time, and prospective resources, quantities of undiscovered oil that are potentially recoverable. Combined, these three classifications yield the total oil in place on any given date. Of course, as you might have guessed already, Russian classifications are somewhat different than the internationally accepted SPEs, although they do correspond with the total petroleum initially in place under the SPE classification. As such, inquiries realigned Russia's reported resources to those of the SPE for comparison purposes. So, to answer the question, according to the Russian Ministry of Energy, Russia has 223 billion barrels of total oil in place in 2021. 143 billion barrels are discovered reserves and contingent resources, and 80 billion barrels are prospective resources that are actually recoverable at 2021 prices. This ranks Russia sixth largest in the world based on proven reserves, behind Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Canada, and a few other Middle Eastern countries. By comparison, the largest single oil basin in the U.S., the Permian Basin, has a total endowment of 114 billion barrels of oil, about half of Russia's total, 52 billion of which is discovered and 62 billion is yet to be discovered prospective resources. One of the best ways to put these resource numbers into perspective is to look at the reserve life. This is a measure of the number of years a resource will last at current production rates. However, to account for the realignment of Russian classifications, inquiries calculated the discovered reserves and contingent resources life. So, with Russia's average oil production in 2021 being 10.6 million barrels per day and 143 billion barrels of discovered oil, equates to a life index of 37 years. The equivalent life of the U.S.'s Permian Basin, with production of 3 million barrels per day, is almost 50 years. The majority of existing Russian basins are considered mature, and production is in decline, with the largest oil-producing region located in western Siberia declining 10% over the past 10 years. The main reasons Russia is in this predicament include decline of existing wells, so new wells must be drilled deeper, lower productivity of new wells due to drilling in areas with low net pay, significant water yield in many wells, and low quality casing in many of the older wells. As a result, production and net present value, or NPV, of many wells is lower than expected. So, what is the impact of sanctions on Russian oil reserves? As in many countries, Russia planned to increase or at least maintain production by using new technology, particularly IT technologies for seismic interpretation, geological analysis, reservoir characterization, and engineering. In fact, the Russian Ministry of Energy considered new technology as a key in reversing negative trends in their oil industry, including use of modern drilling and completion techniques. Having said that, much of the new technologies and financing typically comes from Western companies, which are no longer doing business in Russia due to the sanctions. Many of the largest oil producers have left Russia, leaving considerable stranded assets behind, including Shell, that exited the existing Sakhalin-2 project with up to $5 billion in losses expected. BP left its 20% stake in Rosneft with up to $20 billion in losses. ExxonMobil left the Sakhalin-1 project with up to $4 billion in losses. Equinor left with about $1.2 billion in losses. And Total Energies has indicated that they will stop buying Russian oil altogether. In addition to the major producers, all of the major oil field service companies are also leaving Russia, including the biggest names like Schlumberger, Baker Hughes, and Halliburton. Inquiries believes that without Western oil producers and oil field service companies, Russia will not be able to increase the reserve base, maintain production, or reduce costs, as most new fields require the latest technology to explore, develop, and produce. While Inquiries expects production from older fields to decline at a rate of up to 40%, technology that Russia had previously acquired will help support production for a short while. However, as the drilling of new wells is always required to maintain or grow supply, a drop in production due to aging technology is expected to occur beginning this year.